You've been talking to Vern Nelson.
I'm Vern Nelson from the Anaheim Democrats Club and the People's Homeless Task Force, and we've been here fighting Anaheim corruption for years before the FBI came along and made it cool. Now we're part of the Clean Up Anaheim Coalition with O'Cord and several other groups of concerned residents. I'm here today to urge you all to give the JL group the time and money they need to properly complete their investigation. This should be thought of as the people of Anaheim's investigation, since we demanded it and we're paying for it. So you should think about that before you even consider cutting it short, which I trust you won't. A few of you at the last meeting, I'm sure you were making an honest mistake and not just echoing the Chamber of Commerce line, but a few of you suggested this investigation was only supposed to be about Mayor Sadu and the failed stadium land heist. Not at all. I looked up the scope of work given to JL last August, and it'll take too much time out of my speech to read it all here. And it's also tedious, so I made copies for you all just in case you haven't looked it up yourself. I think once you read that, you can see how JL will need more time for all the work they were assigned. This is what the former council, the Trevor O'Neill Council, asked them to do. Is it possible that the Ashley Natalie Council wants less transparency and accountability than the Trevor O'Neill Council did? Is that even remotely possible? That doesn't make sense. You guys all ran on a platform of reform. Say it's not so, or you also make us all think you have something to hide. I'm sure others will mention this, but the total of $1.5 million for this investigation is actually on the low end of what the Trevor Council was planning to offer. They were suggesting $1.5 to $2.5 million because they knew how much work they were asking the firm to do. You could look it up. Granted, $1.5 million is not a small amount of money, and neither is $750,000, but it's a bargain basement price to learn what's gone wrong in this town over the past decade. What's put Anaheim in the headlines this past year, the bad, embarrassing nationwide headlines, and for determining how we can finally have an open, honest government in the future. Or let me put it in the form of a MasterCard ad. 2014 Garden Walk giveaway, $158 million. Unnecessary deserted Arctic station, $188 million. Construction of Mickey and Friends garage that we built for Disney, $216 million. Federal COVID money steered to visit Anaheim in 2020, $6.5 million. JL Group investigation into Anaheim corruption, $1.5 million. Having an open, honest government, priceless. One more time, an open, honest government, priceless. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Carolina Mendez. I'm a member of Chispa, an organizing political home for young Latinas building power and community in Orange County. I'm 23 years old. I was born and raised in the city, and I call District 3 home. And this isn't the first time I've joined my community behind this podium. My people and I are no strangers to fighting for what we need and for what we deserve. And what we deserve is accountability, transparency, and a fully funded investigation into the corruption that's become synonymous with our city. We deserve to know the truth about what's been happening behind closed doors and hold those responsible accountable for their actions. Transparency and accountability are the foundation that should guide every decision made by our elected officials. When government officials engage in corrupt activities, it undermines the trust that our residents have in their local government, the trust that we have in you. Some of you have said that you've been speaking with community members who don't see the need for the allocation of funds. And my question to each of you is, where are they tonight? I've been organizing with members of Accord, members of Chispa, along my neighbors and fellow residents who, despite being confronted with countless reasons to feel disillusioned and disappointed in the system, continue to persist and fight for the Anaheim that they know we can be. They're here tonight. And if you're being told that this investigation isn't necessary and that the scope should be narrowed, take a moment and consider who that's coming from, because it's not us. And to those of you who campaigned on a platform of restoring dignity and trust to City Hall, stand by it. Start right here. Vote to fully fund this internal investigation. Show us that it was more than a catchy slogan on a mailer, and stand with the people that elected you. Compromising this investigation under the guise of fiscal responsibility does nothing but perpetuate the idea that nothing's changed. We've gained no champions. If you're committed to upholding the status quo that's left the needs of our residents and families unmet, if your priority is achieving re-election by appeasing donors and special interests at the expense of my people, then you won those seats, but we've gained no champions. All that's changed now are the faces I have to look up at as I implore you to do right by us. And you have an opportunity tonight to do right by us. There's nothing that says that our relationship has to be innately adversarial. We just need you to listen. I'm 23 years old, And I'm discounted by people in power like you all the time. You might not see the value in my presence or my words here tonight. Some of you won't even look at me, but I still matter, and my people still matter. The future of Anaheim matters, and so funding this investigation tonight matters. And I hope that you have the political courage to recognize that tonight.
Boy, she was great. The problem that we're dealing with in this investigation is basically this. We cannot have people who are negotiating on behalf of the city where their interests are to increase the benefit to the person on the other side of the negotiating table at the expense of the city for their personal benefit. And if you don't know when that has ever happened over the past 10, 15 years, however long, then you need to find out, because that costs a hell of a lot more than you're talking about paying these people. Natalie Meeks, I want to suggest that you should recuse yourself from this vote. There are 3 departments of the city that probably would be likely targets of the investigation based on reporting I've done for years. One is the planning department under Rudy Amani and others. One is convention, sports, and entertainment under Tom Morton. But the third is public works under you, where we already talked about Arctic, which I don't think that the restaurants on the top have ever gone in, which is a story in and of itself. And the question about moving the train station, which we thought was for a parking garage in Anaheim, but it turned out to just be making more money for more space for housing. And then, of course, high-speed rail and why Arctic can't accommodate it. So there are lots of things that need to be looked at there. I want to suggest that whatever you've said about trying to keep this quiet, the report, you should allow J&L, if you're not going to, or J&J, whatever they are, if you're not going to let them make it public, you should let them give their materials to the California Attorney General. And that's even better. You know why? Because he has subpoena power. And if you don't want to do this right yourself, you should see what subpoena power can do for you. There's one other possibility. I mean, if you really think that you're going to get away with pretending that this doesn't happen, you know what the people of Anaheim and those of us who are interested in it can do? GoFundMe. $750,000. Now, that's a lot to be able to get through a GoFundMe, but publicity is priceless. You know how to vote.